This clip is brought to you by SaveWithConrad.com.
So let's talk about, as you're sort of weighing your options and seeing what's out there. I hate to just brass tacks it, but you're comfortable talking about money. You eventually realize, hey, these checks are going to stop coming. And, being a dad and two little ones and a big old house on the lake, I got to have some income coming in. What did you think would be your next move? Or were you just legitimately not worried about it and knew God had a plan and thought something will present itself?
You'd have to talk consciously and subconsciously. Consciously, I knew that, look, there wasn't, well, quote unquote, WWE money or WWF money in Puerto Rico, but Puerto Rico and Dutch was down there, Japan. I knew there were options, but also knew that, somehow, some way I've made a living in this industry. Something I didn't have that conscious thought of, I'm going to go start a promotion. Not certainly, and I'm trying to keep it chronological, not at this time. Also my faith though, it's going to work out somehow, some way. Like you just said earlier, I went out and got my contractor's license, into 95. My dad, through his, career, he has been able to pivot, in a lot of ways like none other.
That's really where I was going is I just assume since it's not like, okay, well, if this don't work out, I got no backup plan. You've rattled off, your dad's had 100 different businesses. So worst case scenario, you can go talk to dad and say, hey dad, which one of these is hitting and where can I be a player? Right.
And he sort of encouraged me. He did a deal with BP Oil of re-imaging gas stations. That was really an oversight job that show up, make sure the workers are there. It's a turn and go. It was high turnover, 100 stations, 150 gas stations. So we'll just say the construction business, obviously he owned a lot of land, putting in road, water, and sewer, which I knew nothing about, but I was never afraid. Now, I'm going to go back to my dad and my grandmother. Roll up your sleeves and learn the damn business. It's on you. So I didn't really have like, oh boy, what am I going to do? And I had been pretty, I bought this house at the right time.
Yeah.
So I didn't have my quote unquote monthly expense was not overwhelming. I've never been a car guy. I'm just not. I'm a house guy.
Yeah.
I've never been a car guy. So from a financial perspective, I wasn't thinking I need to get paid. Didn't we cover this on episode 1?
A little bit.
Money. I'm kidding. The paycheck.
Yeah.
I'm kidding.
Well, I can speak to, obviously I'm in real estate and I mean, I don't want to share numbers or anything, but from when you bought it to now, your house is probably worth what? 5-6 times what you paid for it?
5.
Yeah. So you did good, Jeff. You did good.
Lucky, Grace, lucky.
There you go. So when do you think your Time Warner contract was set to expire? Just sort of fill in the gaps. We know the last Nitro is March 26, 2001. When do we think, okay, the gravy train ends here?
So my contract, you touched on earlier, I went to the WWF in October of 93. And that from the next 8 years, October was always my October 17-ish.
Yeah.
That date was the rollover time. So I know it could not have been before that. I want to say, because I negotiated with Bill Bush, we were the dotting I's, crossing the T's. I had that, we'll call it addendum. I got paid per house show. I got in, my travel, and that was somewhat of an add-on as well. And Bill Bush was getting his feet wet in the whole process. I tried to jog my memory on this episode because I knew we were talking about the summer. Diana Myers, it came to me about 2 hours ago. That was the attorney. So anyway, I want to say November-ish. It could have gone into early December, but it was mailbox money every 2 weeks. So November-ish was when it was going to, quote unquote, the checks quit coming.
So you had about 8 months to sort of get a plan together and figure it out. And you mentioned a minute ago, Diana Myers, she was your contact with Time Warner if you had a question or something like that?
There wasn't a lot of quote unquote questions. It was the merch that they sent me, the guitars. That was about it. As far as reading the contract, my attorney basically said, look, you're going to get paid, they can't provide you with work. There is no breach language in here. Go do what you want to do. I think I had a couple of conversations with Carlos Colon, who ran Puerto Rico. But there wasn't anything specifically that I needed to reach out to Diana. But if I'm not recalling something, that would have definitely been, we always got along well. She understood, quote unquote, the wrestling world better than most. And she was great to work with. So if I did have a question, it would have been to her.
Now, you said something there I want to follow back up on. There was no language in your contract about breaching it. I
No,
guess what I'm asking
no, when I say, yeah, that means like if I went to work, they're not paying me. There was no like, hey, you can't go work over here because there's no really infrastructure for you to be going to work. It says you're getting paid out, period.
Okay. So I guess my question is, if you wanted to scoot down to Puerto Rico and do a shot, you could.
Oh yeah, definitely.
But now during that time, you just decided, hey, let's let absence make the heart grow fonder. Let's spend some time with the family. Let's enjoy the lake. Let's just chill out for a bit, right?
Yes, without question. And I'm, I don't recall a specific conversation, but I'm sure I bounced things off my dad in a 3-minute conversation in that, hey, just knowing the industry, the timing wasn't right to jump on board. Although I learned real quick this is a little wrestling note. When I went from the WWF to WCW the first time, I noticed real quick the style of work. I'm not talking about working toward hard camera, but I'm really talking about the laying out. Sean taught me that in a lot of ways. Owen taught me that in a lot of ways. The agents, Jack Lanza, Chief Jay Strongbow, different folks, obviously Pat's at the top of the list. He would really get specifically, but I noticed the difference in that. And so that was one of the things that I was like, okay, how are the WCW talent going to get acclimated to the flow? It's different. I may be getting too deep into the woods here.
No, you're not. Jericho wrote about it in his book and said that he had been wrestling for a long time when he got to the WWF, and he realized very quickly, I don't know shit in terms of I don't know their style. And so guys were saying, oh, he's the shits and blah, blah, blah. Meanwhile, he had been heralded in all the newsletters and all these other promotions. He'd wrestled in Mexico and Japan and WCW and ECW, and the WWF was like, I think he made an analogy, and I might be misquoting here, but it was almost like if you're right-handed, it was like writing with your left hand. You know what to do. It's just really hard to like, wait a minute, I've always done it this way. And so you sort of had to get reacclimated.
Very well said. And when I look back on it and sort of just getting the vibe of it, and look, Vince McMahon has no peers, in my opinion, the greatest promoter, but he didn't teach that style, in my opinion, Pat Patterson. So when you think about the influence Pat has had on the industry, I don't think you can overstate it.
Yeah.
I just don't think you can.
Hey, Big Daddy, you got to get excited about saving people money. Woo! Woo!
SaveWithConrad.com.
So talk to me a little bit about, and I realize we're getting super granular here, but I think all of this stuff is fascinating. When you're, you got this downtime, and I know this is a weird question, but I've had these conversations with Rick where, hey, I was on the road for 30 years. And then when I, got sent home after WCW and I was home, Beth and I couldn't live together anymore. It was, they still loved each other. They still wanted to be married, still wanted to be a family, but their family unit had grown accustomed to, dad's gone, mom's running the house. And now dad comes back in and he's like, no, we're not doing it that way. Even though it had been happening that way for years and he just wasn't there to know. Their family dynamic grew accustomed to him being on the road and her taking care of the house. And it worked. Now all of a sudden he's there and he doesn't want to be not there. So he tries to be active and present. And it really created some problems. Now your kids are much younger than his were at that moment, but was that an issue going from being a road warrior, for lack of a better term, and being on the road all the time to now I'm home and Jill just looks at you and it's like, why are you here? What are you doing? Does that exist?
Not really. No, Jocelyn was 5 and Jacqueline was born in November of 2000. So, I mean, she's not even a year.
Yeah.
So, that takes up a lot of mommy daughter time, an enormous amount. So me and Jocelyn, but no, the broad stroke you're painting, there was never any of that. Again, just she did her thing, I did my thing. When I say that, she worked out and trained and all that, but also raised the kids and mommy time and all that. But there was never any of like, what are you doing here? What's your name?
Well, let me ask too, because there's two sides of this. Not just, hey, you're sort of upsetting the household dynamic, but a lot of times guys have said, "Oh, I kept my wife away from the business," blah blah blah. But some of the guys, like Rick Rude, I think, is on record saying, "Don't let your wife around the business," for a variety of reasons. But one of the big ones is she'll know we're not really working. We're having a good time with our buddies. And it doesn't feel like this stressful thing. Don't get me wrong, the travel sucks and blah, blah, blah. But you had been a part of this fraternity of wrestling for 15 years at this point. You had been, developing a camaraderie with this group of guys, and you're making towns and you're meeting at the hotel bar and you're riding down the road and drinking a few beers, which obviously we shouldn't be doing, but hey, things happened back in the day. And now, no, we're changing diapers and getting on the jet skis. Do you miss any of that? A lot of people listening to this feel guilty, like I'm at home, but I feel like I should be at work, or I'm at work and I feel like I should be home. And now here you are really with no option, and you've got to be missing some of that fraternity and camaraderie, right?
I can't, I don't think I ever recalled, man, I miss hanging out at shows. For the camaraderie. Now the career, yes, as we get into the late summer, the itch on next steps, I think, would be a natural progression, but not really the camaraderie. And I kind of think again that growing up, and the first wrestling show I went to, well, obviously with my dad, and he made me sit in the audience, which I was like 7, 5, whatever it was, Nick Goulas TV. But that as far as, so I rode with my grandmother, then I pulled the ring and then referee, then I started wrestling. So the fraternity has always, yes, the boys, all that, but I don't really think, to specifically answer your question, I don't ever recall saying, man, I really miss the camaraderie.
Well, here's what I mean. Like when you're out there on the pontoon boat, do you pick up the cell phone and call Brian James and say, "Hey man, come spend the weekend"? Because you just miss your buddy, right?
Well, and that was, I'm just trying to think who else was around, but JB would come up, and I've got, I'll call it my gym buddies. There's a group of us that over the years that we've stayed, and we've bounced from gym to gym, but so always stayed in contact with them. But no, it was the lake and chilling and grilling steaks and that kind of stuff. There was not, family time, and I'm saying extended family time as well. My dad, all that kind of stuff. Jason, my little brother.
Well,
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at savewithconrad.com.